Good morning, birds. My name is Azlyra, and welcome once again to another episode of the Oracle Connection podcast, where we talk about just about everything Phantasy Star Online 2 and probably beyond. Once again, I'm here, Azlyra, with, Cammy Cakes, which is my co-host, once again. Hi, Cam, what's up?
Hello. Glad to be here as usual, and I'm very happy to hear you say beyond, alluding to new things coming in the PSO universe.
Yeah, totally not talking about a little bit, of something that's going to be going on later in the future of PSO2 itself. No, I'm just kidding. Anyways, I know it's been a little while since we actually did the last episode of the podcast, but that's mostly because we've been actually really busy on doing a lot of things, whether it be, say, the super anniversary stuff for PSO2 JP, a lot of the new NA updates, episode 4 release, the 24-hour anniversary stream, and there's just so much stuff we have to cover right now.
There's so much. Every time we sit down to, chart out the podcast and what we want to talk about, they hit us with another bigger piece of news back to back. We're like, oh, forget that. Now we got to talk about this.
Yeah, right?
So here we are today.
Yeah, exactly. And also, even right now, as we're recording this, the JP side of things and the NA side of things, they're just rolling out their updates on their websites because we're recording this right on maintenance. So right now for JP, we have the start of Road to Luster, which I'm going to be expanding on what exactly that is a bit later on. And then NA side, we're talking about all the new episode 4 stuff, and then just all the urgent quests and whatnot that's going to be coming out, yada, 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 yada. So
yeah, we're really into PSO when we schedule our podcast around maintenance.
Right?
We can't play the game, so we might as well talk about playing the game.
Exactly. It's hey, what are you doing? I'm doing Phantasy Star Online 2, but PSO2's on maintenance. Yeah, we're doing content. There's no better time, honestly, where we actually don't have to play the game. But yeah, anyways, since we haven't talked in a while, Cam, what's been going on recently with your side of things?
I feel like I have learned the ropes of PSO, that I've graduated from noob to slightly less than noob. I'm now just garbage player, but that's okay.
You mean Ark's trash?
Yeah, we gotta have the NA meme. The boss,
yeah,
Luther,
exactly.
or Loser as he's known in Japan, always says the famous line, "Piece of Ark's trash," right before he swipes the sword across the screen.
He knows.
But yeah, man, it's been nice. I've been experimenting a little bit more in depth, not just the 0 to 75 or max level on classes, but more exploring classes. I've obviously done Ranger, I've touched Force, and Tector so far. I have a Braver Ranger as well that's pretty competent, and I just started a Baby Hunter. So not quite close to 12 yet, but I'm getting there.
Now, see, when you say that you're branching out to the different classes and stuff, I know a lot of people regard you or see you as the Ranger player or the person who likes to play the Ramal, throwback to the classic Phantasy Star Online. But how's the experience been leveling all the other classes, going from say a Ranger even to just you said Braver Ranger right there? I assume it's a Bow Braver. But even just that, it's completely different. And then say Ranger going to Force, going to Hunter, it's how's the experience been for you?
I will take personal challenges if I'm unfamiliar with the class. For example, the story mode has hardcore completions for Star Gems. So if you complete them, you get Star Gems, which is always nice. And of course, it's no question if I can complete them on Ranger, but on Force, it is a challenge because I'm not really familiar with it. So anytime I hit a stop point, a bottleneck where it's just getting a little too difficult, I'll workshop it with stream and ask questions about Force and learn about it. I'll go to the practice mode where there's just a stationary rock bear and you can start experimenting with damage. And once I have a couple things to practice, I'll spend a few hours practicing, the mechanical muscle memory and whatnot until I don't have to think about it. And then I'll go try another stab at the story mode quest. And that to me has just been steady skill acquisition on Force. Not anywhere close to the skill I have on Ranger, but it's getting there.
The question I want to ask kind of is how are you adjusting to the gameplay differences? Because the way you play Force and the way you play Ranger, say, is completely different. How not even just the mechanics alone, but also how you position yourself and how you need to look at the game and just think about things, Well,
with Force, I have to be aware of bosses being affected by elements more often. So, for example, on Onga, it can get panicked and knocked on the floor to be damaged. And sometimes doing that immediately is not the best call, because you want to center it around a fuse technique so you can instant kill it. So I have to think about that, whereas on Ranger, you kind of just keep wailing at it.
Yeah, I mean, you're also a weak bullet dispenser at that point.
Exactly. As far as the team outlook, though, playing different things has made me appreciate what other people might be doing and how I can help them. Especially going back to the weak bullet timing and where I'm placing that. But yeah, Force is drastically different. As far as amount of sub-palettes, I have to add more. Force on both servers, from what I understand, it's pretty much just a lightning spell caster.
Oh yeah, about that.
So I've embraced that meme, and I have Gazonde, that's the spell, on every single possible sub-palette option on one of my palettes. So it's just,
yep.
I switched to the Gazonde palette as like a joke, and it cracks up stream every time.
Yeah, for sure. It's a big meme.
There is some truth to it, though. When in doubt, Gazonde it out.
It's almost never bad.
It's been more fun on some bosses, and on other, I wish I'm playing Ranger. For example, on the first part of the Profound Darkness fight, when you're fighting the castle, the Gemini castle, whatever it is, I like playing Force on that a little bit more, because you can target the weak points through the boss.
Yep.
Instead of having to physically walk around the boss to hit it. And so on Ranger, I sort of had to pay attention to its patterns so I can stand in place and charge something up and have the boss come to me instead of me coming to the boss. But on Force, it's just lock on and spellcast away.
Yeah, and speaking of patterns, now that you mention it, right, did you know that for the Gemini Castle, or the double castle as we call it, basically whenever, like, after he resets the tongue, after you break like the two parts and stuff like that, there's very specific locations that the bits will always land on. So if you actually learn how like his patterns and everything work, you can pre-spawn everything, even as a classic Ranger.
I've started doing that with Ranger. I have started doing that, where as soon as I break the tongue, I step back, start charging, and aim slightly to the right, and it usually lines up there for me. Might be different on Japan. They might have a harder version or something.
But yeah, speaking of like the Profound Darkness now, right? For PSO2 NA, initially when your Profound Darkness was released, you actually got the easy version of it. But then I think you actually got the harder version like a bit later. I'm not sure which week patch it was, but you actually do have the harder version of Profound Darkness right now.
Right. We do have the harder version. I spent a good couple hours doing the old version of the triggers because they say 14-star weapons have started dropping from those.
Yep.
So of course you gotta try if you got them anyway.
Yeah, there's been reports of people having like these spread needle drop from, say, like Apprentice in, I think it was like TD4. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of things that's going to be very interesting. For anyone who's actually out there to farm the crap out of like 14 stars by any chance, I'm just saying, TD3, if the drop table is correct by what I know from JP, right? TD3 is going to drop Rycro Staff for any players who play Summoner. And that's one of the most important like tags in the game, or harmonizers as we call it in North America.
Okay, so now I will not be skipping TD3. Thank you.
just a little bit of a fun tidbit, It's nothing to like scoff about, but it's also nothing that you need to like say, hey, let's go do it like crazy, because eventually it's going to become very accessible regardless at the end of the day. So all these like 14-star drops be like, oh my god, you don't need to like go hard to get it, because it will become accessible at some point. You don't have to worry about it at all.
So TD3 I like a lot, but I have overplayed it at this point, because there was a campaign in NA where they said complete TD3 15 times within that campaign period.
That's a lot.
And you could get it done naturally, right? Just waiting for the urgent quest to pop up. But then they realized that it was too much, so they started giving triggers to the players. And so I wanted to make sure that all of my Alliance members who wanted it done got it done. And so over the course of a few days, we managed just sitting there, trigger trained for anybody who needed it, and it took forever. So needless to say, I'm pretty decent at TD3 now, but I am burnt. I'm absolutely burnt out.
I understand. Done. No, but Cam, now that you talk about like tower defense and trigger trains, I have like PTSD flashbacks to when I actually sat there for like 12, 14, 16 hours just doing TD4 triggers with my teammates back in the day.
It makes me wish that you get maybe additional drop or something for having your towers never hit in the first place, or some micro challenge like that, So if you're going to spend all day doing it, you at least can challenge yourself in that regard.
I mean, S rank does wield the highest amount of drops. So regardless, like, I mean, if you're getting S ranks, you're getting the highest amount of drops possible. So.
Oh, you know what's even funnier is my mom plays PSO2, by the way. Like,
yeah.
She genuinely plays the game.
Yeah.
And she complained to me the other day she was having trouble with an urgent quest, and so I asked about it. And sure enough, TD3. She goes, Cam, I was trying my best. I even used all my moon atomizers. And then she goes, everybody keeps trying to attack the boss, and they forget about the towers, and then the towers blow up. And I said, Mom, that's the last bad TD3 you have. We'll help you out for one. And so we invited her to do it with the Alliance, and it was hilarious. Yeah. I remember one person was even like, they had an auto chat that said, like, try not to die. And my mom's like, I'll do my best not to. I was like, no, Mom, that's an auto chat. And then sure enough, that person died, and my mom revived him.
No.
Anyhow. Yeah, even my mom's got to experience TD3. She plays Summoner. So I'll let her know, like, now that you're you know, a boss at TD3, you can get the best tact in the game.
Yeah.
But that spread needle, though, I need to get that. Enhance the Romaral.
Yep, time to farm the TD4 camp.
For sure.
But it's actually funny that you mentioned about, like, you know, people going for bosses and tower defense and everything. You know, the quest is literally called mining-based defense.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. The thing about those kind of activities in any game is if the challenge is hard enough, you cannot do every job by yourself.
For sure.
At some point, you have to relegate positions. For some groups, TD3 is like that. So it depends on the character I am. If I'm Tector, I'm pretty much just crowd control and buffing people when they need it. And then, of course, one smacking groups of enemies. I don't really like to go bossing on the Tector. On the Force, however, especially with Talus for the extended range, I'll go hunt the boss if I have to. Oh yeah, I said it, I know. Sin in Japan, nobody uses Talus, but I think it's fun.
Yeah, it's okay.
It adds a dynamic of gameplay that's just fun. I don't care if it's more efficient or better, it's just fun.
Yep.
But seriously, it's been so cool. I've been doing Force Fighter, and Fighter has those subclass abilities where you can change your stance to do more damage when you are behind an enemy.
It does.
So I started saying, you know what? What if I throw the Talus in front of an enemy and physically stand behind an enemy? Turns out it works with the damage boost. And so you can kind of finesse some extra damage. Sure, the setup is impractical, but it does exist and you can try it if you want to.
Now here, a little bit of context for people who don't know how the fighter stances actually work with the Talus, right? So you can throw the Talus, say, like, behind the enemy, but that's not going to proc the back damage because the back damage actually is your location in relative to the enemy. So, like, if you're behind it and then your Talus is in front of it, you still get back damage. So, like, that is correct. But you can't be in front of the boss and throw the Talus behind.
I've started getting fancy with the Talus, man. In TD3, the walls will come up, and I'm like, it's okay, I can still hit that. Throw the Talus over the wall.
Yeah. Now here's a fun question, Cammy. Have you ever figured out what is the part of the front the wall is? Well, or rather, like, which part is the front of the wall and which part of the back of the wall? Like, how you proc those stances?
No, but I did not know. Now that's a piece of homework I have to go study. Normally with the walls, I try to, you know, hit two birds with one stone. If the walls intersect and there's multiple walls, I want to be hitting, like, at that point that they intersect. So maybe I get splash on both. That's the fun of PSO, though. There's, like, so much depth and so many things you can do.
Yeah. Now, here's the fun thing that I want you to think about just for now. I'm not going to reveal the answer, but try to figure out how the Brave and Y stance or the front and back stances for fighter work with Darkfall's Elder.
Well, I would think since you can never physically get behind him, that it would then be the hands themselves. So if you're behind the wrist joint, closer to the main body but behind the wrist joint, that's my guess.
You would think otherwise. Thunking. I won't reveal it for now, but that's just something fun that you can go figure out sometimes.
Okay, down.
Given the chance, that is. It's nothing crazy though, don't worry about it, but I just think the interaction's a little bit funny.
I'm curious now. I'm about to go boot up an Elder Trigger.
But yeah, speaking of triggers and stuff, hearing the word trigger now after doing all the PSO2 JP like anniversary stuff, I don't know how to feel about that. For anyone who doesn't know, Cammy and the guys on NA, or well, the NA boys that came over to JP and stuff, for the PSO2 JP's anniversary event, right? There's this like 24-hour ranking thing that we all did for fun. And they actually got into top 100 for actual ranking. And then there's me also creeping into top 50, which is very cool as well. But yeah, we had a really, really awesome 24-hour stream. Just running the same quest over and over and over again.
That was super fun.
It was actually though.
For those who don't know, a trigger quest is basically doing an on-demand urgent quest. So you don't have to wait for a particular window. As long as you have the trigger, which is a item in game, you can use that trigger to spawn the quest immediately. And so on that special JP event, you could do the public version of it, right? Or you could use a trigger. And the trigger was a 4-man activity versus the public event being a 12-man.
Yep.
And since we were not going to spend our hard-earned Meseta on triggers, we thought, let's do the public event to get into this ranking. Because as long as you get completions done, you get points that add to your ranking. And at the end of the 24-hour period, that is your rank, whatever amount of points you have. So we wanted to save some Meseta and do it the public route, which meant that for our best chances of success on the public route, I had to get something called expert matchmaking.
Yep.
And so now we get down this long rabbit hole of getting expert certification to unlock the right to queue with other people who have expert certification. So this expert cert is a 2-part quest. One is an extreme quest, and the other is, would you say, a boss battle? Is that the best way of describing it?
It's more or less a solo raid boss.
Solo raid boss. So the extreme quest portion of it is 5 stages of objective and boss fights. And that was the more fun part to me of the two, between the solo raid one and the extreme quest. The extreme quest usually has a task in it. So the task for stage 1 might be, don't use a healing item or don't get hit in the first minute. The second stage might have only kill an enemy when they're affected by a status ailment. And so you have to consider these objectives, because if you fail it, it makes the next stage slightly harder.
Yep.
So it might say your rifle does less damage in the next stage because you failed the previous stage objective. And everyone kept asking me in the attempts at the expert trial, they kept saying things like, oh man, that must suck or whatnot. Must be struggling out here doing it 20 times or whatnot. To me, that's the fun of a game like PSO, is having a challenge that you can overcome. And the extreme quest portion, you don't get to skip to stage 5. You have to do 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. If you fail at 4, you still got to repeat all of them to get back to the 5th or the 4th. And so to me, it was like chipping away at mastery. That first boss I learned pretty well, and I got a pretty consistent strat for that boss. And at the time, I was doing it with Novell weapons, if I recall.
Yep, just basically stock weapons.
I call it starter pack endgame gear.
That sounds good.
So starter pack endgame gear, I didn't tweak anything to be too much extra deadly for the weapons, just the basic stuff. And chipped away at learning these bosses. And this will be fun to mention later, but I went back in there with what I'd consider really good stuff, and it was a night and day difference. But I'm so glad I did it with the starter pack stuff, because I feel that I did exactly what it was supposed to do, which is certify me as an expert, so that if someone queues into me in a public group, they know that I at least somewhat got their back. And that's kind of the point of expert certification. It's to have a baseline before you even start the queuing process. And so I had to get good, in a sense. I just had to get good. I had to learn these bosses and grind away at them. And learn my Ranger subclass. I had to have some workshopping done to increase my damage, because again, this is starter pack gear. I had to learn how to do 1-3 combos with the Atoll subclass. learn my invincibility frames to dodge boss things. There was even a portion, remember how I mentioned there was a stage objective where you have to kill stuff with the status ailment? I thought of a loophole here with something that everyone told me was bad. So I have this obsession with trying to recreate the Gomorrah from the old Phantasy Star games, but in PSO2. And the launcher on Ranger has special bullets. There's a panic bullet, a blinding bullet, and a Gelin bullet. And Gelin bullet's the one that I like. Mm-hmm. What Gelin bullet does is if you damage anything with it for a period of time, 15 seconds? Something like that. They do less damage to anything they hit. So if you shoot the boss with the Gelin round, they do less damage to you and your teammates, which sounds kind of awesome. But it's at the opportunity cost of having your weak bullet loaded and ready on your rifle. And the weak bullet is sundering the boss's armor, allowing you and your teammates to do more damage to the boss. So unless you have multiple Rangers in your group, Gelin rounds are almost an automatic no-go.
That and also the Gelin isn't that strong either.
You're right. The Gelin isn't that strong either, but one can dream.
Yeah.
So here's where the big brain on this expert quest comes in. So on the portion where you have to kill an enemy affected by a status ailment, there's lightning happening all across the room. And at some point, some of the enemies get afflicted by that lightning ailment. What's it called?
It's a status effect, basically.
The lightning status effect, okay.
Or, well, the shock status effect, but yeah.
So since I was trying this expert trial so many times, and again, chipping away at mastery, learning every in and out, I was noticing some inconsistency with getting these enemies to become status affected by the lightning. So it hit me in an epiphany. Why not just status affect them myself when I think they're going to die?
Exactly.
And the best part is, if you load a special bullet onto a launcher, you spend less PP, that's photon points, that's your meter for abilities, per photon art. So instead of spending, let's say 30 per shot, it'll be 27.
Yep, it's in conjunction with the skill on the Ranger tree, which is the bullet PP save. So whenever you have a special bullet loaded, whether it be on your rifle or your launcher and stuff like that, you get like 20% reduced PP costs, which is amazingly powerful.
Yeah, it ended up being really, really clutch throughout the expert certification, because I would load the bullet and then I would read what the stage orders were, what the objectives were, and sometimes it would say the enemy takes more damage from a launcher. And then I'd say, oh, well, can't I just load a bullet and only use my launcher? And since I saved the PP, it means I can attack more without worrying about getting any of the meter back? The answer is yeah. But it was really clutch on that status ailment, because it's just shoot the floor and they're all hit by Gelin. Gelin's a status ailment. And as soon as I know they're hit by Gelin, that's a 15-second window to just nuke them and complete the stage order. I thought that was a super cool gameplay interaction. Everyone told me Gelin bullet sucked, and I found at least one use for it.
You know, I've seen some really, really shad things with those like expert requirements. Well, not expert requirements, but rather the Extreme Quest trials. Like, you know, the status effect one. One of the coolest things that I've ever seen people do, you know the stun, right? It's like stuns are actually a status effect, but you actually have to kill the enemy on the hit that they are stunned. Because like the next hit that you do and stuff like that, the enemy will get like unstunned. So basically you have room for one exact big hit.
Oh, okay. I'm seeing where you're going.
Yeah, so basically you literally stun the enemy, and then the next hit that you do, you have to kill for it to count for the status effect. Like, I find that to be one of the most like shad thing I've ever seen anyone do.
Yeah, that's wild. That's crazy.
There's always some really, really fun stories that comes out sometimes with doing like all these extreme quests and everything. I love extreme quests, to be honest.
It's some of my favorite content.
Yeah, having a gameplay difference to do like different kinds of like things that you don't really consider in your normal gameplay is, I think it's wonderful. I think it's really, really fun.
I like that process of chipping away at mastery, just really, you know, mastering each stage, because you kind of have to. If stage 4 is what's giving you problems, You still have to master stage 1, 2, and 3 to even get the chance to try 4.
Exactly.
And trust me, you're going to want to master them because you don't want to just barely get through stage 2 if stage 4 is still giving you problems.
Yeah, because like if you fail, once again, you have to try again at the very beginning. Like you got to go 1, 2, 3, and 4. So
I don't want to get like too off topic here, but since I was talking about the underutilized gelling around, I was like, okay, I found a use for this.
Oh, God.
Then there was this launcher ring that changes the way your launcher shoots. And when I read the description, I was like, oh, this is going to be like gelling rounds. Everyone's going to think they suck. But they might have a use for something. So what this ring does is you equip the launcher ring, and it changes the way your launcher shoots. The launcher normally shoots out like a rocket, and it just splashes wherever. But what this does is it turns your rocket into a wet noodle. The rocket just limply falls out of the barrel of your rocket at like a parabola. It apparently hits harder on the normal hit.
Yeah.
And it looks hilarious.
Oh, it's only like it's a little bit harder and then also a bigger splash.
But the distance that you cover is, I would say, 1/4 of what your launcher can do.
Yeah.
And if you shoot directly up in the air, it'll go behind you sometimes. And here's what I was thinking, right? When I read the description, it changes the launcher into like a parabola shot. I was thinking aim straight up in the air and pre-spawn enemies with status bullets, since it's going to take a while for the bullet to land in the air. No, it turns out you throw on the ring, and it only takes a second for the missile to fall out of your launcher onto the floor. So it can't even do that.
Yeah, it's like, in Cammy's mind, Cammy's like, dude, I'm going to turn my rocket launcher into like a mortar. And in reality, it's like, no.
It's such a sad animation.
No.
So if you have a spare 400k to spend on Japan, I'm sure it's expensive as hell on NA. Just get you that ring and have a good laugh with your buddies. It is so funny.
Yeah, we were just sitting here, just giggling. Cammy's first reaction, like, I can see the glow in Cam's eyes, right? It's like Cam's like, oh no, this is gonna be amazing. It's gonna be like some of the coolest thing ever, because like, oh, this is like some gameplay change. It's like some exotic stuff, you know? And then when you come out and actually try it, it's like that reaction is just priceless.
Yeah, trombone fail sound, whatnot. It was seriously a wet noodle. Just limply fell out of the rocket. But anyway, gelling around was a mild success. A launcher ring was a huge failure. So you win some, you lose some. But the point is, all the way going back to the expert trial, the extreme quest, they require you to play the game a little bit differently and sometimes think outside the box, and that's super fun. So anyway, I grinded through it. I would say it took at least 50 attempts. Somewhere in there.
Yeah. A lot of people, some people may have more attempts than that, or some people, you know, Cam, did you know, Perp, literally, like, I was just training him and workshopping him when he was playing JP in the very first time, right? And then he just got to Etoile within like the first 4 days or something of gameplay.
Yep.
And then I workshopped him really hard in doing like, hey, this is how you do all your combos. This is how you do everything. And then basically he literally got into expert trial. And I'm like, okay, cakes, mini cakes, or perp, right?
Perp's my brother.
And I just basically like taught him all the basics of like, this is what you do, this is how you counter things, this is how you should approach things. And literally to know, within the next day, he tried it for literally 5 runs and actually got the expert trial with literally ungrinded stock weapon.
Dude, Perp lives and breathes PSO like you and me. This is really his favorite game of all time.
It's amazing. Like,
so he goes in.
I never expected something like that from a newer player. Like, I think I mentioned this before in like a previous podcast episode, but like, it's incredible to me how literally like a completely new player to PSO2 with just only a few days of like prior training and everything like that could literally just like get completely ungrinded stock gear and be like, okay, I'm just gonna get expert now.
And not only that, understand as to what he's doing. He's not just looking for the easy way out.
Yeah.
He's understanding it. And that's what I was going to say next. Like, sure, I took 50 attempts, but it was maybe within 10 attempts, I could see the answer to some of these boss kills. But it was doing it in a way that just wouldn't translate to the rest of the game. So I'd ask myself, is this really certifying me to be an expert if I can sort of cheese my way out of these kills? And I ultimately just wanted to master the stages, so I said no. I said I'm going to do this the right way. At least the right way to me.
Yeah, the slow and steady and just like learning everything. Because once again, like for you guys, right, as newer players to the game and everything, you don't have our prior experience. Like you don't know what these bosses are. You don't know what these enemies do. You don't know the limitations of what is available to you and everything like that. So it's generally incredible for me to see and just like see how newer players just like think about how you approach things and stuff like that, which is going to be, we're actually going to expand on how we learn things a bit later on in like the other section of the podcast too. But for now, yeah, that's just incredible to me.
So I took it as a learning experience. I wanted to learn every mechanic and truly master the stages. And so there was a cool moment in the first boss where there is a button that you have to stand on. And if you stand on it for long enough, you get the privilege of using your healing items at full effect. Again.
Yep.
I don't want to spoil it too much for people who are trying this. Go in blind right now. Like, don't even listen to this. Go in blind. Yeah. Experience it.
It's fun. It's fun.
And so if you stand on the button, the boss is like, you should get off that button right now.
No, for real, I swear.
He aggroes you.
He literally has like scripts where the moment you touch the button, he's just gonna like shoot projectiles at you or something like that.
And so me over here being hard-headed, I said, you know what? I'm just gonna learn to iframe every attack he throws at me while I'm on this button. And I figured out the strat. Long term, when I eventually completed this, the button was an afterthought. You don't even have to do it. But when I was struggle bussing through the first couple attempts, I said, nope. I'm going to workshop it right now. I am learning how to iframe everything this dude throws at me. And it worked. It absolutely worked. And I was able to take that same skill set and apply it to other things in the game that I go in blind to. And I'm like, wait a second. I've seen something like this before. When in doubt, just know your iframes. For example, the Ranger has the impact slider, which slides at you. And during the slide animation, you have some iframes. The parallel slider has a startup spinning animation, which does give you iframes.
For the crafted version.
The crafted version. Let's be clear there. And then there's one that's very, very odd.
Yep.
Called Sneak Shooter, or Stealth Shot in NA, where you go prone Call of Duty style and just fire a shot. And it also drops your character to the ground. So if there's like a blade that flies over at maybe chest level, you can activate the Sneak Shooter right before, and the blade might completely go over your character model. And so between the combination of the startup times on those things and exactly what I'm trying to do with my damage, one of those three is the correct answer. And so finding out when and how to use those, not only to dodge attacks, but to set up combos, was just paramount to completing the expert trial in a way that I was satisfied, and in a way that I could leave that expert trial saying, I can handle this, I did it, I could do this again if I go in blind, or if I go in again, no problems. Unless you experiment with your launcher like I did yesterday. That was funny as hell.
Yeah, and speaking of that, right? Now, this is a very good like transition point into it, because we were just talking about like learning all the new mechanics and learning all this stuff here and there. So, as a lot of people may know, Mr. Camcakes here is a Destiny player, and a lot of people know that as a Destiny player, you kind of live or die on a lot of these weapons called the exotic weapons. Exotic weapons are basically weapons that have special effects that is only unique to that weapon alone and things like that. And well, guess what? PSO2 has something similar as well.
They're either extremely unique or just a rule breaker. That's the best way to describe it. So normal hand cannon shoots one big bullet. An exotic hand cannon sometimes shoots a burst of 3. That breaks a rule, don't you think?
Yeah. That's huge, though. That's like
a normal hand cannon shoots at 150 RPM, rounds per minute.
Yep.
An exotic hand cannon shoots at 225, but has severely reduced range. So you could see how some of these are rule breakers.
Yeah, but functionally, the point is, some of these weapons just like change how you approach the game and play the game like that. And so, Mr. Cakes here actually got a hand on his first quote-unquote PSO2 exotic weapon, in which in PSO2, right, we can actually have these special abilities called the SSA, or the special, like S-class special abilities, in which some of them actually do change the game and how you play it to a large extent. So what Cammy got was his Liberate launcher and the S5 called Fury Zero.
And this essentially turned my my launcher into a shotgun. And that was pretty cool. In fact, I took diffusion shot or diffuse shot off my rifle because I don't need it anymore. That's the rifle version of the shotgun. Yeah. So I take my giant rocket launcher, which by the way is pretty much as big as it's gonna get in Japan. I learned transmog too, so I put the SSPN launcher onto my Lib launcher. Now it looks like SSPN. So I have this giant launcher, this super small character, and she spins, shoves the rocket in someone's face, and shotgun blast. And big damage, and I don't even have the ring leveled for the damage. So sure enough, as soon as I got my quote-unquote exotic weapon in PSO, go right back to the expert trial and try to do it with just the launcher.
Well, that didn't go so well.
No, that didn't go well at all. But so it turns out there's a way to get more damage onto that shotgun blast of the launcher. It's called what? Close and personal? Zero distance?
Yep, zero distance.
It's called zero distance. Maybe it's called close and personal on NA. If you dodge an enemy attack, so keep in mind that when you do a dodge roll, it has those iframes. If an enemy attack goes through those iframes, you are given the opportunity to hit very hard with that close and personal with that zero distance. So it ramps the damage up a lot. So this has completely changed the way I have to play with launcher. Now instead of dodging away and repositioning, sometimes dodging into an enemy is the answer. And that's super cool as an option. So yeah, boss swings sword, I dodge into sword, and then come out with a shotgun blast to the launcher.
Yeah, just let me explain a little bit how Fury Zero works, right? So for zero distance, it's a PA that's already really strong. But then, as Cammy said, if you actually dodge roll with that 0.013 seconds of invincibility or something like that in your dodge roll, you actually get this boost, which makes zero distance do plus 150% damage and costs exactly 1 PP. And trust me, it does so much damage.
It's wild. And the fact that it costs 1 PP means that you can now chain it into combos if you really want to.
Yeah, it's possible to literally hit damage cap with the boosted zero distance. That's how strong it is. Or, well, that's how strong it gets.
And I'm just super excited to add that to my arsenal and start thinking about how to apply that.
Yeah, because it changes your gameplay entirely, right? Like, as a ranger player, you would never think that you would want to dodge roll into anything.
No, you always want to dodge roll in a way that sets you up for some good damage later down the line. But dodging into them for the better damage, now that's going to be fun.
Yeah, and then you have to reposition yourself too, because it's like, oh, am I going to go in close or am I going to go far and abuse, the sharpshooter damage and everything like that? Like, there's so much more depth into your gameplay now that you're like, I have so many options. Like, when this core is down or something like that, it's like, do I actually start doing, the zero distance stuff? Or like, do I actually do an impact slider? Or like, what do I do? How do I fit in?
So now call back to where we were talking about playing Force way earlier in the podcast. So play Force a little differently than Ranger. I play Tector a little differently than Force, for example. So on some boss fights, the Tector drops Zonverse, if I recall, for extra damage. And sometimes as a ranger, I have to have that thought of, do I want to spend the time going all the way into that Zonverse? Or do I want to stay here and hit multiple boss parts or something like that? Stay far away from the boss. With this zero distance launcher, it might mean I want to be close inside of that Zonverse circle if they're right on top of the boss. That might change it up enough for that to be the answer.
Definitely.
Just clear cut.
And it also depends on how the boss is too, because some bosses are extremely aggressive. So you can chain dodge into zero distance, into dodge into zero distance, into dodge into zero distance. That is so much damage.
Yeah, I've been liking using something called Cosmos Breaker. Is it the same thing in Japan? What's it called?
It's Cosmos Breaker, yep.
Anyhow, Cosmos Breaker is this giant blue orb that when it touches the floor, it turns into an even bigger blue orb that just repeated explosions. And it will carry an enemy upward if they're weak enough. And so what I like to do is use the traps, the gravity grenade, the stun nade, the poison trap, and the spring trap in conjunction with this Cosmos Breaker because of the ability to hold them in place and make sure that my traps absolutely hit them. which will then refill my meter.
Crowd control.
Yeah, crowd control. Typical crowd control. And so now combining the Cosmo Breaker holding, the trap maybe springing them, and now the zero distance hitting the whole crowd at once, especially for the low cost of 1 PP. My crowd control game has just went up on Ranger.
Yeah, and also some enemies don't get crowd controlled, right? So they try to attack you while in like the gravity or anything like that. And guess what? You dodge roll with the zero distance and you need to get even more damage boost.
I'm serious. I'm about to have like such a cool Ranger combo video come out at some point. There's so many interesting things you can do. The crafted rocket rodeo. Is it rocket ride in Japan?
It's rodeo drive, but yeah.
Dude, we gotta come up with like a consistent name between these two.
It's okay, as long as we understand it.
Anyhow, you ride your rocket.
Yep.
And as you ride the rocket, the fuel coming out of it will increase and like more fire will come out of the tail end of the rocket. And this signifies that if you hop off the rocket, you will do a lot more damage when your character slams the rocket in someone's face. And it's a pretty cool repositioning tool, because you can reposition and then come back and clap back even harder when you return. And so that's another mix-up with the launcher, especially in like crowd control situations. If you know they're getting held by a Cosmo Breaker, and if you know you have a trap queued, like a spring trap, to then stun them again, you can time out that rocket rodeo, so right when the spring trap goes off, you just smack them out of the air, back down to the floor. PSO is such a beautiful game for that kind of stuff. Like, I want to make a fighter because I see the potential there. I just don't have the time at the moment to see it through to completion. But that is on my to-do list.
Soon TM. But you know what? It's going to be even worse now because there's also some other things coming up that will probably delay your learning fighter, to be honest.
It is. I'll probably get to fighter by next year now.
But yeah, anyways though, before we talk about all of that though, you know, before the storm happens and like the new final boss of episode 6 and like before the new awesome class, totally not called Luster or something, but yeah, no, it is called Luster, for those who has not seen the reveal of the new Gunslash class yet. But yeah, before that, we have this like nice 2-week break with the summer event coming up with all the swimsuits and everything. Kind of like the calm before the storm, you know, before we go in here. Be like, hey man, we're just going to go to the beach, you know, enjoy ourselves with the bikinis and the summer dresses and everything like that. Like, is there anything you're excited about for now, Cam? Literally just before everything goes to like crazy, chaotic everything.
We're finally in the beach episode of the anime.
Yeah. And this is also really cool also because JP and NA is going to be having Beach Wars just about at the same time. Although it'll be a different version of Beach Wars for both servers, but...
That's part of the fun of playing both servers.
I think that's cool.
For me as a completely blind player, I get to see some version of how it used to be.
Yeah.
And then I get to see like the upgrade most of the time.
Yeah, like the newest version.
Yeah, man, I'm ready for the swimsuit edition in Japan. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. And this time we got the new swimsuits of like the heroine characters too. So we have like a special swimsuit for number 1, Matoi, which is the heroine for like episode 1, 2, 3, right? And then there's this special swimsuit for Hitsuki, which is the quote unquote heroine for episode 4, which you guys are going to experience in NA very, very soon. And then episode 5 and 6, heroine, which is Harriet, also has a very special swimsuit. So it's going to be very interesting to see people incorporate like their really like exotic swimwear, not trying to pun that, but into like the characters and stuff, because these are quite unique in my opinion. Some of them look really good.
They're pretty cool designs.
Yeah. And then some of them are a little questionable.
Yeah, definitely questionable. But then you're not going to question it when you realize you get an experience and rare drop rate boost for wearing a swimsuit. And if that's all you got,
right?
Well, like, I'm not going to stop you.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's really cool for these like seasonal quests and everything. I find it such a cool concept where it's like, yo, it's the beach season. So if you wear a beachwear, you get extra like, you know, boosts. I think that's awesome.
It hurts my Macedo wallet.
It does, but I mean...
And this is just after coming out of that 24-hour stream, too.
Yeah.
Because keep in mind, we kind of glossed over this one, but the NA boys got top 100.
Yes.
And what does that mean? Oh, we got some rewards.
Yeah. Like, you guys actually reached top 100, competing against all the other JP players and everything. Like, that is absolutely nothing to go over and be like, nah.
You guys don't realize how close this race was. So I grinded out my expert cert, got it done, and then they're like, quick, help Cam. Give him slightly something better than starter pack, because this is really going to add up over the course of 24 hours. So cool. They upgraded my kit just a little bit. I still had garbage units. But it doesn't matter. I wasn't going to get hit anyway, or so I thought. And this urgent quest for the... What's it called? The campaign?
It's a
anniversary event.
Anniversary quest. Just call it the anniversary quest.
We'll call it the anniversary quest. This anniversary quest had turrets that you use to shoot enemies. And these turrets hit really hard. I know you guys might be used to the NA turrets, which are also like the launcher ring, just wet noodles. They barely do any damage. The Japan turret claps. Biggest damage I've ever seen in the game.
I know, right? The DPS is insane. Imagine this. If you headshot with a turret, you literally do 500k damage per one single shot.
And that RPM it's got to be over 600. So some wild stuff. And I had to sit on the turret for 24 hours at some point. And so it kind of felt like playing Osu, man. It really did. Just click the circle. You sit on the turret and you just get used to where these enemies are spawning. And over the course of the day, you get laser accurate on that turret. So now anytime I'm in NA and see a turret, it's just like, let's go back for some old good times. And then I realize the damage sucks and go back to just shooting the rifle normally. The limited quest, the anniversary event, was pretty cool on the trigger version. Turns out that for doing the public version, you sometimes get a drop of the trigger version. And the trigger version is the 4-man variant instead of the 12-man. And it's a lot quicker to do. So you can get more completions done if you use the trigger. But the triggers also cost Meseta. And we don't have Meseta. We are poor. So around the 18-hour mark, we had to assess where other people were on the ranking and decide, do we use our triggers? Turns out the answer was yes. So we started doing the triggers, and just like the expert trial, just like the extreme quest, how you sort of chip away at the mastery and really get good at those sort of things, that's what my group of 4 had to do. We had to come up with the strategy that fit the 4 classes we were playing, which was 2 Atoll, 1 Ranger Atoll, and 1 Hero. I was the Ranger Atoll. So we sent a Hero and an Atoll one direction, and a Ranger Atoll the other, and learned a strat that was pretty consistent, and we mastered our individual boss fights. That's kind of how it feels. When you separate off the sides, each pair of 2 fights 2 bosses, and within that, you can either strategize to 2v1 a boss twice in a row, or you can 1v1 a boss. We went for the 1v1 routes. So I got to 1v1 this like machine flying thing. It's pretty cool.
It's called Fortress.
Fortress, for those who don't know.
Yep.
The Ranger approach to it is really fun, and over the course of 6 hours of running that trigger nonstop, I feel like I got pretty good at that boss, and that was a lot of the fun of the 24-hour stream. And so it started coming down to the wire. I was optimizing my damage on all the boss fights, really falling into a groove with my team and my personal play, and we were just watching ourselves climb up the ranking, and it got down to the wire at the very end there. We went Super Saiyan. I did not miss a shot with the turret at the end there. And we didn't even get to look at the ranking because they update once an hour. So within that final hour, we didn't look. We just go. Not a second wasted. We keep grinding it out. Sure enough, the 24-hour period comes to an end, and we check the ranking. Perp is sitting, I shit you not, at 99.
Yeah. He was literally...
And Perp, for some reason, was the lowest on our team.
Yeah.
Despite us all playing the same amount. I don't know how that works, but...
No, and the thing is, like, that 99 is literally... If that person at rank 100 did exactly 1 trigger run or 2 more pug runs, he would have been beat.
So our team got into top 100 barely. And so now think back to that previous week of everything that had to fall into place for that to happen. I had to get the expert trial, slightly improve my gear, acquire and consider using triggers, and get good with my team at the exact rate I did, or we miss out on top 100. It was that close. And the reward for it was pretty cool. So we get, what are they called? You essentially use them to augment your weapons and your gear.
Yep, it's basically the like grand boosters and the grace boosters and stuff like that. So basically it's some of the end game weapon stuff that people like to go for anyways. You get basically a set of all of them. So you get one for striking, one for range, one for tech, and HP PP.
And since I only play range on JP, that was some free Meseta.
Yep. Because the striking one is worth so much Meseta. And also, the fact is you also get a lot of this thing called crack. Yeah.
So the top 100 reward was those augment weapon things or armor things. And through doing the limited quest, you could get a drop of armor. So 24 hours of doing that limited quest, naturally, we get some units. And those units sometimes have crack. Crack 1. It's a cracked photon crystal, right?
No. So like the enemies in episode 6, right? This is like a little bit of like lore. If anyone doesn't want to hear this, like cover your ears for like, I don't know, like 20 seconds. But basically, the photoners, right? They have these infection cores that go on the enemies, and we call them the photon cores. And then what they give the enemies these special barriers, you know, where you have to do like, oh, hit the enemy in the air, hit the enemy from the ground, from behind, or stuff like that. So basically, you crack those barriers, and that's where crack comes from. Because you crack the photoner barrier.
You crack the photoner barrier. That's the way to describe it.
Yep.
Anyhow, these cracked photon barriers or whatever sell for about $1 mil per piece. And we got a lot of pieces.
More.
Okay, let's just say more, but at the time it was 1 mil, and I saved them till they, eventually rose to 1.5, 1.6. So I did it right. And I was sitting over here like, oh boy, I just went from 0 Meseta in the bank to over 100 mil. All right, I'm out of debt. I go pay my debts back, and I'm sitting back at like, I don't know, a 60 mil bank. And then Arcy hits me with like a just terrible piece of news that my favorite emote in the game is not returning in a future campaign. And this emote is called Dance 20, by the way. It's a pretty cool dance, let's just say that. And I was convinced that it would be reviving in a future campaign. No, that was not the case at all. We were bamboozled.
We got bamboozled because they literally showed it in video. They were like, in the updated video, they're like, this is coming back.
And so, sure enough, I was devastated. And I checked the market. Because sometimes you don't even see Dance 20 on the market. It's such an old item. Who randomly keeps that?
Yeah.
The last time I checked is when I first started my Japan account. It was over 200 mil at that day. It was easily more than 200 mil. And there was one single one on the market. And I said, at 200 mil, there's no way I'm ever going to make that amount of Meseta.
Yeah.
So don't buy it for me. Just leave it there. I'm sure I'll get it eventually. And a month passes. There's no Dance 20s in the shop. And I'm kind of like, damn, I should have bought that. And then a week later passes and Arcy's like, there's Dance 20. It's coming. It's going to get revived. I'm like, yes, I waited. I made the right call.
And then bamboozled.
And now I'm sitting here with my earnings from the 24-hour stream. Like, do I really want to spend this all on one emote? And it ended up being 90 mil. I was kind of hoping it would be like that 60 or whatever I had. So now I'm back in debt, needless to say.
Yeah, and not only that, there were like 10 in the shop.
Dude, this is like a bad episode of Animal Crossing. I'm over here, hooray, I'm free from debt. And then Mr. Tom Nook Arcy is like, I can upgrade you to a bigger house. No, but it's all fun. I got my default emote, as I call it.
Yeah, and more.
So who knows when this is coming back. I know how to play the game a lot better now. So honestly, 90 mil is something I do not even fear coming up with.
Yeah, I mean, all in all, like the entire experience and just the journey of it is just worth it. And then I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people love playing these kinds of, online RPG games and whatnot, is because you get these storylines, you get these journeys that you just don't experience in, say, other games usually. Or other genres of games, rather.
I think the economy in these kind of games is the game for a lot of people. It
right?
Truly is a reason to do all the content in the game. And things are designed in a way which they might be easier, a little more mundane, but the amount of currency you earn for doing those is pretty low unless you're extremely lucky, which then creates a reason to go for game mastery, because typically the harder content gives the better currency yield. And that sort of drives players for mastery, which they won't even realize that that's part of the reason that they like the game.
Yeah, and speaking of like mundane grinding content and everything, when we actually got to talk to each other yesterday before preparing for the podcast and everything, the first thing I asked you, because you were saying like you were doing your Destiny 2 Nightfalls and things like that, I'm like, Cam, how are the grinds? Like, did you manage to like find efficient ways to grind it? And little did I know, this man's just like, yeah, I completed like this really hard raid in like 7 minutes. I'm like, yeah, sure, okay.
Oh, yeah. In Destiny, they structured their Nightfall strikes, which is really the equivalent of an exploration or a free field in Phantasy Star, which is you kill some enemies, you do an objective, and you fight a boss at the end. Simple concept. Well, each week they pick a special stage, so sometimes it's a different strike per week, and you get the same rewards, which is an exotic armor piece sometimes at the end, and some good materials. And obviously you want to complete this as fast as possible, because completing it slow doesn't necessarily mean you get a different reward, but completing it faster means you get the same reward, but faster. So you learn to optimize. Because you'd be doing hundreds of these. It's not that the exotic drop rate is abysmal, it's that the pool of exotics to get is so large. There's 40 exotics-ish of armor to get per class, so that's a 1 out of 40 chance of getting what you want. And then the stat distribution has to be right within them, and then the stat total has to be high enough to make work with whatever other stuff you have. So needless to say, you could see yourself doing hundreds of exotics to get that ultimate build that you've always wanted. And that kind of sucks, and that's something I hope Bungie improves on the future. But it is what it is, and I have to play the game as it stands. And the best way for me to manage both Destiny 2 and Phantasy Star Online 2 at the same time is to only do Nightfalls when it is a fast strike or has the potential to be a fast strike. And so this one, I got down to about 7 minutes-ish. And it had potential to drop a lot more, but I'm a little lower level than I need to in Destiny right now. So that's really good, all things considered.
It's like, I wonder if something else has been consuming your time.
Yeah, exactly. I felt like I've been doing a really good job rotating all three of Phantasy Star JP, Phantasy Star NA, or Global as they call it now, and Destiny 2. I felt I've done a really good job of keeping up with all three at a somewhat fast rate.
But yeah, like all in all, like the reason I wanted to just bring the, Destiny example up is just because the fact that like we're talking about, say, optimizing your runs and just like the mastery of it, right? It applies to just about everything we do in Phantasy Star as well. Like, if you're going to be grinding, you might as well make it as fast and as painless as possible. So
yeah, I mean, we had a conversation yesterday, and I don't want to go into this rabbit hole, so let's keep this one brief. But
yeah, let's TLDR it.
This one was using weapon or lobby action canceling to move slightly faster. Because I had a point where I was unlocking skill points on my Atoll subclass, and I had to run a very long distance with a very slow class, so I said, you know what? I'm getting a katana, and I'm going to fly around the map. And Arcy's like, why don't you just lobby action cancel to go faster? And then I spent a good 20 minutes trying to learn to lobby action cancel to save, like, I don't know, a tenth of a second every dash.
No, just for like super quick context, right? Lobby action canceling is basically something that you had to do back then. Because back then in PSO2, old PSO2, right? Your movement was so slow that dashing was so much faster, in which for when people had to compete for like time attacks and everything, you had to do like, all the lobby action canceling to do the dashing and everything like that. You get the idea. But basically, I've been doing that literally just about every day because you had to do time attack client orders literally every single day back then. So I would spend like 4 hours a day just doing lobby action canceling on like 6 characters.
So the long story short is, saves upwards of a tenth of a second a dash. You do 100 dashes a mission and, do the math over the course of not only days, years. How much time is that saving?
Hashtag optimization.
Right, hashtag optimization. So now we can hop off that, but all you need to know is it's not necessary to play PSO well. It's just a fun little Easter egg from people who needed it to stay competitive back in the day.
Yeah, it's just a fun thing that, like, you know, a little bit of a tap to the past, which especially nowadays it's completely unnecessary. So no worries about that at all.
It's unnecessary. I mean, the only equivalent I can think of is reload canceling or swap canceling in Destiny. Swap canceling, I would say, is necessary to compete at the highest level, but reload canceling isn't, because the game tries to prevent it the best they can. You could still do it, but it's more of a visual advantage and not an in-game advantage. It's just you get to get back down your weapon sights, but you don't necessarily get to shoot until the reload finishes.
But yeah, either ways though, that's that.
So yeah, fun optimization.
Although now that we talk about like optimization and everything, there's this one thing that I really, really, really want to go into now, because this is what's going to be our life for the next like half year, which is number 1, Sodom and Gomorrah, which is the True Profound Darkness, aka the final boss of Phantasy Star Online 2, episode 6, that's going to be coming out, which I predict is going to be coming out on September the 2nd for PSO2 JP. Which, this is going to be an amazing experience, because Cammy and me, we're about to get to experience a raid boss together, completely blind.
That we are both blind to. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's like, how are we going to approach this?
I can't wait to try it with the NA boys, and then not hear what you think about it, and try it with you guys, and just see the staggering difference of how teams handle it.
Hey, you never know though. You and Perp and like the guys there might actually just be able to see something that we might not have noticed, right? Because we're both blind to this. Like, you might have noticed like, oh, on phase 2 there's like this small thing, but like we're like, oh, we never knew that before.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it even on this podcast before, but the idea of the master swordsman not fearing the second best swordsman, but the new swordsman, because the new swordsman will do something that isn't optimal or isn't the quote-unquote right way to do things, and it'll throw them off and seem weird. In the same way, new players on any game can sometimes pick the right answer, not even knowing why it's the right answer.
Yeah.
But then again, you guys also have the experience of knowing, for example, bosses in the past were affected by status ailments. That wouldn't have even occurred to me doing bosses blind for a very long time.
Yeah, and especially you don't play tech classes too, so that's more or less not likely going to happen ever.
Yeah, I mean, on some bosses, if I were to have played all of PSO blind up until now, it would have been I hit a wall with a team and we just cannot beat a boss. And then Arcy would be, did you try burning it? Oh, okay. So we have to burn it to win.
And the worst part, it doesn't even have a burn weakness. It doesn't even have a fire weakness. And like, burn? What?
So all that to say is that the NA boys might surprise us. We'll see.
No, but here's my perspective of it, right? Is there even a wrong answer to a completely new boss?
No, but looking back on it, when eventually everyone optimizes it, it's always different day 1 to week 1 to month 1 to year 2, etc.
But no, I'm so excited just going in. Like, I really want to see people's perspectives and just like record everything and just give my thoughts on how we feel the bosses and everything like that. And you know, the podcast we do right after the boss releases is going to be an extremely fun one, where people can just come back to quote us, be like, man, you know, like these guys thought that it's like this, and then like it's just
Yep. Okay. So I'm gonna hit you with something that is my number 1 mistake in Destiny raids when they come out. And this has lost us so much time on raids, it's not even funny. And that is assuming that 2 opposite sides of a boss are symmetrical. So sometimes you'll get warped into a different room, like you and 3 teammates, you and 3 teammates, etc. And you assume both of the rooms are the same, but they're not. Or both the sides of the boss are the same, but they're not. And so you're sort of wondering, like, why is our side completing this and your side is not? What is going on over there? And unless you trade positions, you will not know. Sometimes there is a harder side. And so I'm hoping that when we do this PSO raid, this boss fight, that we do not make that same mistake. Because it does, from like the trailer, look like there is some side separation.
Exactly. I was literally going to say that. Like, there's these platforms that you have to jump to, and there's like the new mechanics of like dodging all the wipes and everything like that. Like, there's so much movement, and there's so much like things you have to take care of. Like, oh, you need to go destroy this like appendage that's grabbing onto that platform or something like that. Like, which one are we going to go to? How are we going to split people? Like, how do we know which appendage we're going to go for? And
Right.
oh, there's so much that's on my mind right now. I just want to like nerd out so much, but like we don't know the boss yet.
But yeah, I mean, I can already see it in PSO. We split sides, and one side's like, oh, you gotta hit a damage gate, and you gotta hit it with a light attack to panic it or something like that. And then the hand will lift, or the eye will lift. And then the other side tries it and just gets shit on repeatedly.
Yeah, right.
Turns out you have to burn them on the other side or something.
Yeah. No, and then here's one thing, right? One thing that I can say without like having to know anything is, you know, how like whenever they put down the hand or like an appendage or anything, you also have to see the length of it too for classes like the bullet bow with piercing arrow or like an attack with ranger and stuff like that. Like you need to be able to like place the ranger on the side where you can hit the most amount of like an attacks and everything too to like maximize that stuff. So like it's so many things you have to keep in mind for each different class's gameplay. And even that, there might be like, you know, the hit zone values for each parts are different. Like, does text do more damage on this part? Does striking do more damage on this part? Like,
what'll probably happen is we'll go in with our safe picks. And in Destiny, that's usually a Whisper of the Worm sniper. It's just a very safe damage option. And as you learn the fight, you will switch off of that safe option into the best option. The one that almost seems like it's made for the fight. So what this might mean is I've done a good job on NA of making sure that no matter what, I always have a decent swap for the fight. So if we need Tector, I can do it. If we need Ranger, I can do it. Bow Braver, I got you. I don't really have a melee option yet, but I also have Force. And so I'll switch to the best job for the boss fight. And I imagine you get to do that for your team too, as you play most of them. And so as you experience this boss fight, I could realistically see you swap off of one of your classes and choose the one that fits the encounter a little bit better, fits the team composition a little bit better.
It's going to be very fun. Like, honestly, the first month or two of True Profound Darkness or Gomorrah here is going to be probably some of the most fun time we're going to have in a while. Like, I don't think there's ever... I think we did mention this before also, but like, I don't think there's a better experience than just getting your butt whooped by a completely new boss or something in like these kinds of games.
That's the fun of these games to me. I can't tell you how much it broke my heart to hear people say, oh man, that must suck, failing the expert trial. Like, no man, this is great. You know how hard it is to find a game that'll make you fail repeatedly?
Yeah. It's just... Man... I feel like if I continue on this topic, I'm literally just gonna nerd out at this point.
So let's go nerd out about Luster then.
Yeah, sure. Or well,
fine, we'll talk about it.
Or well, we're gonna luster all over Luster.
Oh man, my current pun right now is like, y'all think I'm gonna get bored of this game, but after 1,000 hours, let's just say. Looks very closely at the website of things to come in Japan. It hasn't lost its luster.
Yeah. Or you can say like, you know, going through all the grinding in the dark times and you see this luster of light at the end of the tunnel.
All right, quick, before we lose all the viewership.
Yeah, okay. So basically like me and Cam and my entire team, like we were just having this watch party. We had like, you know, 20, 30 people just sitting there in Discord watching Yoshioka Tetsuo, which is the current director of Phantasy Star Online 2, play the new class, which is Luster, which is the Gunslash successor class when it came out on the stream the other day. So here's a bit of context of what makes this super funny and also really, really amazing, right? Is that Yoshioka, when he came into PSO2 as like the director of the game, right? His like, the very first thing he said was, "Hi guys, my name is Yoshioka Tetsuo, and my main class is Gunslash. I've been playing since episode 1.
And everyone's like, "Wait, what did he say? People use that?"
Yeah, it's like Mr. Gunslash main becomes the director of the game. Like everyone was like questioning this guy, like who thought in their right mind to make this guy the director of the game, right? It's like anyone who's a Gunslash main at this point is a joke.
And then you see his gameplay. Oh my goodness.
No. Before that even, like, after that, right, he became the director. He designed the Phantom class. And then after that, he designed the Etoile class. And then he also rebalanced the entire game to the state that we have now. And then now he gets to design his class, which is Luster, which is the Gunslash class. This is literally what the man wanted since probably the beginning of the game. He said he was a Gunslash main since episode 1. and now he gets to design the class for Gunslash. And we're just sitting there watching this guy play the class, and it's like...
His gameplay was amazing. Like, let alone the class design. This man could play. And that is so cool to see in any game, a developer just passionate for their craft, but also good at it.
I was speechless. I was sitting there, and I was just like, if I had a face cam on that raw reaction video, I had my jaw was probably broken right after that. I was just like, how is this guy like predicting all these attacks? How is he knowing like everything? Like, you know how he literally just never gets hit at all in the entire demonstration? Except for one part where I believe he was just going to show that this class has access to also like Megaverse, which is healing, right? So he had to get hit at one point.
Yeah, it was a real struggle for him to get hit.
But like I was speechless. I did not ever expect like this guy to be that good at like the game, and like knowing that the director of the game is just that damn good at the class. Like all my friends are just messing with me. Like my teammates are all like, how did this guy predict like that attack coming? Like does he have like eyes on the back of his head or like stuff like that? You know, it's you guys, if you guys have not seen Yoshioka's gameplay on Gunslash or on Luster rather, you have to go watch that. Like it's a sight to see.
It's truly inspirational. Like when you see that, you're like, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. I want to do that.
Right? And the best part is he does all that while completely being calm and explaining exactly the mechanics of the class. Like as me and Cam, as people who do commentary and stuff like that, do you know how, like we know better than anyone how hard it is to do live commentary while having to play.
To do live commentary, you have to have a baseline competence of what you're doing to the point where you don't even have to think about it.
Yeah, and
this guy is doing a, global reveal for this and explaining the class while he does it. The NERBs, first of all, but also the information. So he has got to be killing it on that class.
Yeah, and playing it at the level he's playing it is just like, wow. Whoa, so why did I ever doubt this guy, right? It's like, who would have known? Our game director is actually a really, really damn good player.
Yeah, and now I see this cool class, and know NA might not be getting it for a little bit, so I'm making budget version of Gunslash and NA for fun.
Yeah. It's going to be really interesting to see like how the game goes from here, right? Because this is the last successor class that they're doing also.
Yes, that's a very key thing that they said. They said this is the last successor class. So what does that mean for the future? Does that mean nothing's coming? Does that mean they're looking at older classes and revamping?
There's so many possibilities, right? But before we get into all of that, right, let's keep that for when we talk about the next topic here. But for now, like, coming into the new class, like we see Luster, we see all the gameplay, we see all this amazing mechanics and everything that we have to study. The question is, how are we going to approach that?
Well, I mean, the reveal shattered my expectations. Like in my head, I was thinking, a lot slower, a lot less flashy for Gunslash, just a mixed mode of shooting and striking. This was way more than that. There's a lot of depth to it. And so the approach to me, I almost want to do one at a time for understanding. Didn't it have 3 stances?
Yeah, it has 3 stances, which basically makes up for 3 different weapons because they have completely different, skill sets.
I'd probably take the approach of 1 stance at a time from the ground up.
Yeah, that's exactly probably what I'm going to do as well, because I have like my eyes on doing one. I personally have the most interest in the Zondia one, which is the fast one, because I think that's going to be very unique, and the one where you get the wings and everything like that, I think that's going to be very, very fun. But for if my prediction, I think you're going to be interested in the Baron style, which is the one where it's slower pace and it's more shooting.
Yeah, that's definitely
rather than being melee.
So once you have broken it down into manageable parts, you start labbing it. You start getting your numbers down for everything to make it really easy to reference things. Then I would say breakout groups with a lot of people also doing the same thing, because you don't want too many chefs in the same kitchen. It's too many people talking. And once you feel that you have a personal breakthrough or found something that is not very obvious, that is when you say, like, real quick, everybody in here, this is what I found out, then back to breakout groups.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, because it's so different, right? All the skill sets might just not even apply to each other, because that's the uniqueness of the class, right? Where it's kind of like similar, but it's completely different to make the gameplay fresh. and it's for you to like be able to like set up your weapons and really set up your choices of what you're gonna do. So the thing is here, right? I look at it in this way where there's two ways of looking at it. Number one is all the DPS and frame data and everything on paper versus actual execution. And then execution here also means, number one, a completely still target like the rock bear. Yeah, like you can practice your execution there completely fine, but does that actually apply to when you're fighting, say, the new raid boss in Gomorrah? Or like, does this apply when you're fighting Darkfall's Persona? Or how does each situation apply to each, you know, situation, scenario, or boss, etc., etc. Oh, which, by the way, I was just going to mention, but they kind of like low-key confirmed, or well, kind of pretty much more or less confirmed, that Luster is going to be released on the 16th of September, which is exactly 2 weeks after Gamorrah, the new raid boss, releases. So that's going to be such like a big time where we get to learn so many things. And we also will eventually get to play Luster on the new raid boss as well.
So we're going to do 12 Luster Gomorrah. Like, come on. We have to.
Dude, let's go. Dude, day one of Luster is literally every single MPA. You're just going to see everyone play Luster.
That's fine. Always, anytime something new comes out, I really like to lab it immediately and start learning it.
For sure, for sure.
I don't like playing anything where it's just I'm button mashing.
And it's the thing is, like, everyone is going to be on the same page, right? So that's the most fun part of it, where we're probably going to be sitting here on like what, a 6, 9, 10 hour stream and just like figure out how Luster works.
Yeah, like I said, it's probably going to be per stance, breakout groups, and then once somebody has like decent understanding, they probably workshop it with everybody saying, this is what we learned on the shooting stance. This is what we learned on the light stance or whatever. And that'll just help everybody learn the holistic class a little bit faster.
It's going to be very, very interesting to see. I'm super keen. I'm very keen to learn. I'm really keen to see. And I'm just really keen to just like see how this will affect the future to come. Because also, you know, bridging this topic into the next topic that we're talking about, right? When you look at Luster and everything, a lot of the movements in Luster really does reflect a lot of the movements in PSO2 NGS's gameplay. I'm here like, dude, that's awesome.
Let's mention NGS for those who have been living under a rock for this one. And NGS is a graphical overhaul to Phantasy Star Online 2. It might as well be called PSO3. What is shared between NGS and the current PSO2 is cosmetics and emotes. The gameplay moving on to NGS will not save your character progression, but it'll save your cosmetics, the way your character looks and whatnot. It's going to be starting from scratch.
It's effectively a new game. It's effectively a new game, but it's not at the same time.
So now back to Luster's movement. It seems like it kind of mirrors what we're seeing on the NGS reveals.
Yeah. So it's like, I'm just here thinking like, you know, they kind of like designed Luster as like maybe even a test for the movement and possibilities of everything in NGS. So if anything, like playing Luster and just understanding the class itself might just be the bridge to learning how movement and combat in NGS will become.
Very, very true. Very valid. One thing I want to mention though is what piques my interest the most about Luster is the possibilities as a subclass, because that adds 12 extra possibilities at least of combos. Some of those are going to be completely irrelevant, but like a Twol changed Ranger might open up a whole new world for a different class.
Yeah, for sure. Like, Twol changes up the game in so many ways that we didn't think about.
I can kind of summarize that real quick. Ranger Hunter is what I have to play on North America because they don't have a Twol yet. And Ranger Hunter, you have to be somewhat cognizant of taking damage and getting hit by bosses. And so you always position yourself in a way that you're not going to get hit, or you can dodge if you need to. Whereas on a Twol, you can eat that damage. So now you're playing a risk-reward game of, is it worth getting hit here for being in the perfect position to do the most damage? And it's a very interesting way to play Ranger. It's risk-reward.
Yeah. Or even, not even that too. There's also the combination of Force at Twol, which is like, who would have thought that Force, the glass cannon class, would literally become a stationary tank?
Yeah, true.
That's very like, what? to me. And then even stuff like, Braver Ranger, right? It's like you play bow, but then now you play Braver Etoile. You literally have the bow literally become the infinite piercing arrow build or anything like that. You can literally become a turret class by just standing completely still and just shooting literal infinite piercing arrows.
And then there's the combo system of using different PAs for increased damage.
Yeah, it's like, I love Etoile so much in the fact that it brings so much unique things to the game.
And so now we go back to Luster here. What might this mean for other stuff? Will I be playing Ralu instead of Luster? Who knows?
Right? It's a very big possibility. Or even, you might even play, actual normal Gunslash main on like a Fighter Luster or Lu. Because right now, Fighter Ranger is like the best combination possible to play a normal Gunslash, right? So what happens if you play Fighter Luster then? So it's just something to think about, right? It's like, yeah. Let's just like take a few steps back and see how this is going to affect the game holistically. And like, a lot of people say, classes and stuff might not be counted as like quote unquote content, but in my opinion, how it affects a game in such a way like this, where you might be able to change your entire playstyle and everything completely, is just very interesting to me.
This is absolutely content to me. I also think that as people start optimizing their gun slashes, the weapon itself, they might kind of realize it might be decent on other classes just as a filler weapon.
Yeah.
Especially when fighting Onga and things that have damage immunity to certain weapons over time.
Yeah.
You might say, oh, well, I've been playing so much Luster, might as well bust out the Gunslash. Anyhow, like, overall, man, Luster has shattered my expectations, and I'm so excited to start digging into the class.
It's only like, 6 weeks out? So...
And that has, lit a fire under me to be really optimizing my Japan gameplay so I can start off real strong with this Luster labbing.
Yeah. And the craziest thing to me is like, because of NGS and everything, people are saying like, oh, is like PSO2 actually going to die and stuff like that, because the new story missions and everything has been a little bit rushed. Like the story is a little less than good. And like, there's so many things that people are like, oh, it's the final class. It's the everything like that. But here to me, personally, I don't mind at all. In the fact that like, I don't mind if there's no new, like, quote unquote, new content. As long as the recycled content and everything that they have right now is a very, very good gameplay loop. As long as they go back and, like, revisit the classes, you might have, like, in next year, you might have, say, a completely reworked Hunter. Or, like, a completely reworked, like, Wirelands gear or something like that of the sort. And that will be completely awesome to me. I don't need new classes as long as these classes get, love, get some rework, get some new mechanics, and get some new stuff. Maybe we have new crafted PAs. Maybe you have new things here and there, right? And then even at the end of this year, we have, after Gamorrah and after Luster, we have new pet, we have new emergency quests, we have the new extreme quest, which you're going to be really happy about, I'm sure. There's the divide quest expansion. There's the new high level, like, difficult solo quest that's coming. There's also the revamp to a lot of the dead content in the game right now also, which the director said that they're going to be looking also at the casino, adding more stuff to the casino, right? They're going to be revamping challenge quests. They're going to be revamping the riding quest. Like, there's so much in the checklist to do in the end of this year in PSO2. Like, even leading up to NGS, we're still having so much content. It's not even a question that PSO2 is dead to me.
So you struck a nerve with this topic, because that's one of my like main suggestions for games. And that is, don't worry about new content. It is if it's not interesting and replayable. Because if you keep repeating that on cycle, eventually you have all this stuff that nobody wants to do because it's not new. It'd be much more beneficial to spend that time making something old better and replayable, so that as you're adding new things, it is in addition to and not a replacement of.
Exactly. Like, for example, Divide Quest. Divide Quest is probably one of the best examples of, honestly, how to make recycle content right.
I could gush over Divide Quest. They are super cool. For those who don't know, Divide Quest is 30 stages of objectives. You get a choice of 2 different stages per stage. So it's like you can go a life route to give yourself more lives or a point route to get you more points. You accumulate enough points, you get rewards for the week. At every 5th stage, there is a boss fight. And so it's tactical in the sense that you have to make the right choice depending on it. If you need more lives as a team or if you need more points to meet that weekly threshold. And then there's also the time of completion. Sometimes it's worth going life just because it's faster to complete and you already have enough points, for example. But anyway, there's also random objectives or random modifiers within each stage. So some weeks you might get very decent modifiers when you attempt it. Other times they might be hellish and require a lot more of you. But that's fun. That's interesting. That keeps it fresh.
Yeah, right. Which honestly, before I like talk a little bit more about this, like before we went on this tangent, honestly, like I think this is answering one of the biggest viewer questions that we have today. It's a question specifically from Aaron Xvia. I don't think I pronounced it correctly, but like Iron Xvia, something. But they asked specifically, with the closing of the PSO2 story and the coming of NGS or New Genesis, which means there's unlikely any major updates in terms of story-wise for PSO2 in the future. But do you think SEGA will periodically release new contents that serves as challenges for the players still playing PSO2, especially the vets, like new limited quests, new emergency quests? Or are we more or less just fighting empowered versions of the existing bosses and stuff and just add new quote-unquote limit testing quests in terms of like difficulty and ceiling and things like that of the sort? So yeah, I think like what we're saying right now is just really covering that topic really well. And I think this is just a really, really good like segue into even talking about like here now, right? We just talked about briefly over the Divide Quest. So now the question is, what are they going to do for the Divide Quest expansion? Is it going to be, say, because we had to do 1 to 30, right? Is it going to be 1 to 40 now? Or are they going to add a completely new set of maps with new sets of rules and everything like that? Because it's all possible.
I personally feel like they're going to go the complexity route. Maybe you get 3 choices of stages per stage. That might be cool.
Yeah.
Or maybe you get a selection of bosses instead of just the one or the other.
It'll be pretty interesting. It'll be really interesting to see how it's going to happen.
There's a lot they could do.
But yeah, Iron, like I really hope this small discussion here really did help answer the question here that you had rather. And then now the real question here, Cam, is also the fact that like with New Genesis coming in and everything, how much do we think the player base currently, right, is going to actually switch over to NGS or New Genesis as their default game, as opposed to playing the regular PSO2? And before anything, right? Before that, I just want to say that this answer is going to be very different when we talk about JP versus NA.
SEGA has done this absolutely correct.
Given the time frame that PSO2 has only been in NA for, 8 months at this point, compared to JP where it's basically 8 years. But yeah,
I still think like the answer might be similar to me personally.
Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
We'll see. We will see. So I need to give the viewers the background here of NGS and how SEGA plans to handle it. And I think they're doing it the right way. I did a video on my channel sort of drawing lines parallel to RuneScape and how RuneScape did a similar graphical overhaul that changed the game, a combat system overhaul that changed the game. And the long story short on that is that the player base ended up liking the old version, but there was no old version to go back to. So they were kind of just stuck with the new version that they didn't like, until the main company realized we should re-release the old version. And players were a little bit burned because they had to restart from scratch, but at least they have their favorite version. Well, it turns out in PSO, we don't have to choose one or the other. We can just do both. I know I like PSO2. So even if NGS flops, I'm still going to play PSO2. But if NGS is good, well then I'm just going to play both. And if NGS is phenomenal, as if it does everything better, maybe I will end up maining that one. But there's also a possibility that they do tie-ins to where you have to play PSO2 to get stuff in NGS and stuff in NGS to get stuff in PSO2. That's a possibility. So in summary, I like PSO2. I'm going to continue playing PSO2. NGS has to be amazing to make me switch over as a pure main game. Otherwise, I'm just doing both.
Yeah, and also...
How about you?
No, that's basically the same thing for me too. Like, and also what I was just going to say just now is the fact that PSO2 is also getting a whole graphical engine and stuff overhaul too to match NGS. So it's like...
Oh, I glossed over that, man. Like, that's big. That's huge for some people. That is the game changer for some people. To me, it's not even important. And a lot of people on my overview of PSO&A, they'd be like, "Oh, it's a cool looking, or it's a cool playing game, but the graphics, they're so old. I'm not gonna play that." Well, how about now? Now that it's getting a graphical overhaul, now
no, but not even that. Though, Cam, you should have just showed them like my screenshots. I'm like, do you call this a bad graphical game? Hello?
I just am of the opinion that the graphics are secondary to the gameplay on any game for me.
No, for sure. Gameplay first, always. But that's not the case for everyone.
It isn't. Sometimes the graphics are the game. I could see that in like an immersive RPG or something, where you want to feel like you're in the game world. Yeah, graphics might matter. So I'd imagine at some point in a development cycle that devs might have to choose between gameplay and graphics. I'd hope this isn't the case, but if it is, I'd always prefer them to default to making the gameplay better.
Yeah, for sure.
Because that's what keeps me coming back for years, and clearly in Japan for 8 years. Which is why it's maybe a different answer to, are you going to keep playing PSO2 or wholeheartedly move on to NGS?
For sure.
In NA, I think a lot of players are just going to move on to NGS. Or maybe even try out PSO during NGS.
It definitely goes both ways.
For me, I am definitely going both. And this also brings up the idea of, do I play NGS on NA or Japan, or are they going to be different enough to warrant playing both of them?
For sure.
I do think they're going to be different enough.
I don't doubt that they're going to be relatively different, because not only that, but also the community and like how people prefer things, right? For example, even in the regular PSO now, you see in NA, some of the most popular classes are, say, Ranger is like the most popular class, and then there's Braver, and then there's, you know, Hunter and things like that. Whereas in more of the Japan side of things, we have a lot of people playing more of like the other things that are not Ranger, you know?
Yeah.
So like the community aspect of it's going to be quite different. Like, for example, in the NGS, we saw the trailer with like the people with the guns and whatnot. I think a lot of the NA side is probably going to default and resort to playing the gunplay, right? While maybe in Japan, we have a lot more spellcasters and stuff, which is going to make the gameplay dynamic for at least the public groups and whatnot rather different.
That's super true. I think we also talked about this a little before hitting record on the podcast, but also the pacing of content at the expense of the graphics. Since it's higher graphical fidelity, there is a chance that the new content rolling out might be a little bit slower, therefore more manageable.
Yeah, that's exactly the case, because how PSO2 updates so fast, like they always have like these new fashion catalogs and everything all the time, is because the game's graphics, well, go pretty much down to PS Vita graphics, in which, PS Vita died for NGS, but anyways, because of the graphical stuff, right? It's like the lower graphics that you have to focus on, the more you can focus on the gameplay. So it's like the trade-off of like, can NGS have a good development cycle in terms of actual speed of the game content development, despite the graphics being really good? Or is it actually going to hinder the development time, and people have to spend more time to, you know, play just recycled content over and over again while waiting for new content because it's harder to make?
Now, I don't know about you, but I am sorted for years to come. So they can take as much time as they want. With just PSO2 as it stands right now, I see 10,000 hours of content easy that I still have yet to play.
Exactly, which is why, honestly, I'm really, really glad, because this topic is not even an issue, because PSO2 still exists alongside NGS. So it's like when NGS gets stale, you play PSO2. And then when you want a change of pace, or when new content comes out, you go play NGS, and vice versa.
So I'm going to put it out there, guys. I've hit my 1,000 hours across JP and NA total. No other game does it like PSO. the whole package. Nothing compares.
In the very first episode of the podcast, you told me to ask you after 1,000 hours, is this one of your top favorite games of all times? So?
No doubts in my mind. It is a top 3 contender. For Perp, this is his number 1. I can tell you without even asking him. So, yeah, no doubts in my mind.
You know, Cam, because you mentioned that now, like, I'm just going to segment this into a viewer question. So, because you say that this is so, like, one of your favorite games, and then yada, 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 I'll let you explain, of course. But the question from MoonXYZ here is, what specifically about PSO2 makes it so appealing for you to play it? Is it the world building? Is it the gameplay? Is it the class balancing? Is it the fashion? Like, what exactly is it?
Let's answer yes. Just yes to that.
I'll let you go ham on this.
It's how all of those things are interconnected. You, for example, let's say fashion is your goal. Well, how are you going to do that? It might require you to understand the gameplay so you can get that easy meseta, so you can buy the things you want.
Selling that crack.
Which will selling the crack, which will unintentionally make you have to understand the class balance and understand your class, what makes that one tick. Start understanding the gameplay systems, start paying attention to campaigns and when things are boosted, when there's a limited quest, a holiday quest, etc., to take advantage of that. And all for the goal of fashion, you are mastering the game. And so, there you go. World building is super simple here. I can play a gun-wielding small character who can also cast magical spells. That to me is sick. And it's set in a sci-fi universe where all of this is just normal. And it's built in a way that continuous content can still seem to come because the darkness is always somehow being reincarnated and powering up over time, and we always have to rise to that.
Now, see, Cam, this is actually a very important point that I'm actually going to point into NGS a little bit, is that everyone knows how, like, you know, the NGS is like 1,000 years after PSO2, right? Guess what? PSO2 is basically 1,000 years after the previous things. Because why? In the lore in the story, the true profound darkness revives once every 1,000 years. So it is not a coincidence that it is exactly 1,000 years after the stories of PSO2 that NGS comes into existence.
Yeah, very true. I don't need a story to sell me on a game. It's the gameplay at the end of the day. But PSO does have the story, even though, and I have played through the story on NA and listened to all the wonderful voice acting. I mean, I guess I say wonderful because some have nailed it. Some nailed it despite having some weak material. And then there were some blunders that still crack me up to this day. And
then some are just like memes.
Yep.
At this point.
The memes. So the first episode paces like a high school play in terms of line delivery and what is being said and whatnot. It's super funny to watch for that reason. But the story itself is decent. Episode 2 ramps it up. Episode 3 ramps it up even more. And as you start getting into episode 4, you'll really start becoming engaged with the story and not feeling like awkward pacing of the high school play line reading.
It just gets better and better. Believe it or not, PSO2 already made me cry 2 different instances for just playing the story. I'm not going to spoil it.
Don't spoil it. And they also removed the bath scene or something, I heard.
I don't know about that one.
I don't know what that is yet, but I'll revisit that in a future episode.
But believe it, I haven't played the final chapter of episode 6 yet, but honestly, I think that chapter probably will warrant me a 3rd cry.
I'll let you know if I sweat from my eyes during any of these.
It's amazing because for me personally, like the voicing work, particularly for the JP side, right? Episode 3 ending was the one where Satomi Sato, or Matoi's VA, voice actress, her acting was just so good that I was so into it. I can't. I'm not going to say anything else, but it's just it's heart-wrenching. Like,
yeah, man. It's back to the question. Yeah. It's the whole package. It's how the world building makes it interesting to play in the first place. The gameplay always gives you something to master, and it feels good to master. Class balancing means you're not limited to one way to play. There is, like I said, easily 10,000 hours of content just waiting for me to play. And then the fashion, at the end of the day, look good and show off some trophies.
Yeah, and then you play kind of like Pokemon in a way, right? It's like, gotta catch them all, but this one's like, gotta collect all the fashion.
NGS has made me care about that a lot more because it says both games are tied to the cosmetics. They're the same, so...
Yep.
Yeah, there are some things that I would not have gotten that I'm saying, will I use this in NGS? Yeah, probably. So then I'll grind out killing a boss for like...
Oh! Dude, Cap, you know what it is? I think a lot of NGS players, like new NGS players, are probably going to sit and come play PSO2 anyways to get the cosmetics from PSO2 to use in NGS.
Oh, 100%. They're going to be like, wait, how did I get that? How did you get the Konosuba outfit? Oh, like way back in PSO2. And then they start learning about PSO2.
Dude, that is such...
That's content right there for both of our channels, to be honest.
That's such a good move from SEGA.
Yep. It's genius.
It's like they did everything right.
Yeah, honestly. Like I said, I compared it to RuneScape, and Sega's done it the right way. It avoids making it feel like your investment is just thrown away.
It's kind of funny to me now because like we're talking about NGS and everything being like the new revolutionary, and this might be like the next, in the next 5-10 years, the industry standard of how MMO games evolve, right? Is that you can transfer your progress and your cosmetics and everything over from the previous game to the next game and whatnot. And guess what? It's Phantasy Star that's the first one who's doing it.
Always. Like,
or well, in like such a big scale, rather. From my knowledge. I could be wrong, who knows, but I would like to think that this is probably the first like major thing. Which guess what, Cam? The very first like podcast we did, Eyes on PSO2, before the NA release and everything, we also talked about this a lot of how Phantasy Star as a whole was like the gaming revolutionary thing.
Yeah, I mean...
And they're doing it again. 20 years later, 30 years later. They're doing it again.
As far as from a systems perspective, yeah, they're always breaking new ground. They're always recreating the wheel in a way that's like, let's just keep using this one.
Yeah.
I'm just overall excited for the future, man.
Right? If anything, everything I hear just makes me more fired up. And I'm just like ready for everything.
I have not heard anything that disappointed me.
Yeah, which actually leads into the next question really, really well, actually. Because we have this question from Oskr as well, which is, how do we feel about PSO2 being too easy until like say like the level 50 plus? And do you think it negatively affects the experience for the new players or all of the players in any way?
I think it's easy enough for that amount of time. Because getting past 50 and into the endgame stuff, after you learn the systems, it really doesn't take long. If I wanted to make a new character from scratch, I could get there in 10 hours. Pretty confidently. So, I think it's good because the brand new players that are just struggling with the menuing, for example, it lets them play at their own pace. And if my mom's a perfect example of this because she started from scratch, like in gaming.
I was gonna bring that up. I was literally gonna bring it up.
Yeah. We sort of gave her the basics. Me and my brother, of course, like coaching her on how to play. We didn't tell her too much, just some of the pitfalls to avoid. That's really it. We taught her how to feed her mag so that she doesn't ruin her mag long term. And then just said, have fun. Explore. There is not really a wrong answer of things to be doing with your time. Just learn the systems. As far as menuing. And then she eventually asked, I have all this stuff in my storage. How do I know what's worth anything? So then I gave her the very, very brief explanation of what is worth selling and what is worth dismantling. And then from there, it's always just one question that leads to, I'll add that to my toolbox. And then they go on. Now she has a maxed summoner, almost a max subclass on the summoner. And she could roll with random group urgent quest. I think that's pretty cool.
I think that's really good.
So now if the game was too hard, she might not have passively learned a lot of that information on her own. It might have just been too much of a bottleneck. So I do think PSO does it in enough of an amount. And you also have the option to start challenging yourself if you really want to. For example, if you think it's very, very easy around those levels, go and try the Extreme Quest Heaven and Earth. If you're not somewhat properly geared or spec'd out for that, it's gonna be a bottleneck. And the best part is, if you succeed, there are some valuable loot in there. There's some augments that only exist from that quest. How about on the Japan side, Arcy?
For the Japan side, everything is pretty much normal progression, right? As compared to NA, where some of the NA progression is a little bit like accelerated, where you get a lot of more stronger gear compared to like what you're supposed to get in that frame of like leveling or something like that. So what I was going to add in, or what I wanted to add in, was the fact that, hey, what you can do is actually, for the NA side, right, say use weaker weapons than what you have for the current level. Like say the level 50s might be a little boring, right? But at that time, maybe what if you actually play with, say, the red weapons, or something that is not like, say, a 10-star, 12-star, something of the sort. It definitely will.
Or we did this on our channels, the challenge quest.
Yeah.
That requires whole game mastery, and it was so interesting. You were kind of doing a live commentary over my first blind run, and that made it super special for the viewers because we were getting like information overload on this, which was awesome. There's so many things that go completely over your head in normal play, like enemy mechanics that you outdamage. You outdamage the mechanic. If you one-shot a Yeti, how are you supposed to know that it acts differently when you don't one-shot it?
And the thing is, like, this is one of the differences between the accelerated pace of North America versus the Japan server, right? Where back then when we had all these balancing, we actually have to learn all these mechanics because, well, our gear is nowhere near as stellar as you guys in North America right now at the time.
And so all this like kind of makes sense with the NGS announcement. I was always wondering why this accelerated of a pace. Because it seems like it's almost outpacing me, and I'm a full-blown content creator. And for us to be able to experience this sort of time machine journey, they have to be really generous with the loot, and sometimes it has to hit hard so that people who don't play as much can still keep up. And the result is people who play a lot will have very, very extremely powerful weapons for the content balancing. And I guess it's up to you, if you want that additional challenge, to lower that on your own. You don't have to stick to it, but try it once or twice. You might learn some enemy mechanics that will pay dividends in a challenge quest. A challenge quest, you start from scratch on a level 0 character, and the loot you acquire in there, it might be okay. Sometimes it's good.
But
that's my take anyway, Arcy.
But talking about paying dividends, about learning mechanics of every enemy and everything like that, Cam, Endless Quest.
Okay.
Endless Quest. Literally,
I haven't done very much of that.
It is something that will literally test your knowledge of the game to the very limits.
So from what I understand, Endless Quest is the end game of Endgame in PSO.
It's exactly what it sounds like.
A never-ending quest that probably increases in difficulty the longer you're in there.
Yep. Basically, the whole premise of Endless Quest is like you basically go through the entirety of the game, through like just about every map, every enemy, every type, every boss, everything. And then you have to do certain objectives, and each map has their own different modifiers and whatever like small challenges that you have to complete in order to gain more time before you run out of time. Basically, you just keep doing these objectives to gain time, and then when you run out, you lose. And then you see, hey, there's milestones to reach for this amount of points, etc., etc., etc. And people compete to see who can have the highest amount of points and things like that in Endless. So it's really something that you really just have to be able to be mastered at literally everything.
And there's a team version and a solo version.
There is a team version. Yep.
So for those, is PSO made for solo players? That is the number one NA question. Can you play this game as a solo player? Well, you can, but should you? It's more fun to play an MMO with friends, right?
Yeah. But
then at the very tippy top, there is a solo option for some insanely difficult content.
But that's also the beautiful part of PSO2 though, is that they did balance, like, you can do solo just fine. You can do low man just fine. But you can also do team play just fine. There's content for everyone. There's content for everything. Everyone has a place in it, and that's just the beauty of the game.
For sure. Now, I'm a long ways off from Endless Quest, but that is definitely on the goal list. That will happen. That 24-hour stream of all that limited quest with the NA boys, that's a good stepping stone. Because we're going to need players like that who, over the course of a play session, improve. And we need to do that for a very long time before we tackle Endless as a group.
Yeah. Some people literally just sit there and just grind Endless for months and months and months. Like, it's so much stuff to learn. And not even just on top of the learning too. There's objectives like Extreme Quests. There's special modifiers just like Divide. There's so many things you have to keep in mind, which can keep it fresh.
And you get your cosmetic reward at the end of the day, so...
Cosmetic being the title.
The title. Yep.
Yep.
What's it say? Just Endless?
The Endless titles are a little bit easier because the harder one is the Eternal ones. So like the Eternal Loner and stuff like that. But the one I'm shooting for that I haven't even reached yet is Eternal Friends, which is basically reach a certain amount of points in a group on Endless 2.
Yeah, that's really going to set my sights a little high. I'll be there one day. I think you got the shot at this.
Yeah. I haven't really like got the time or the proper group to like sit and just grind out Eternal Friend, but like it's not something that you see often.
Not something that you just do. It's something you plan to do.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be a big grind. And like, I think I might be going on a duo to do Eternal Friend with a friend. So... yeah, that's gonna be very exciting. Like the moment we start doing that, I'm probably gonna be doing a lot of like streams and just whatnot, and just like maybe not even streams, because
as a streamer, I like to have those titles. As a personal player, not so much. As a streamer, I feel like it gives me a lot more freedom to have fun in my streams without worrying too much about someone derailing chat with some negative comments or trying to help a little bit too much.
Right.
So in Destiny, it does have some titles like that. It had the Unbroken title for winning max rank in competitive season 3 different times.
Yeah.
Then it also had the Conqueror title, which was completing every Grandmaster Nightfall in the previous season. And those are 2 really decent baseline titles to have, so that if you get that really negative person coming in the chat, you can kind of flick that on and then you don't really see them anymore.
Yeah.
So they don't try to put too much of a damper on your fun. When I'm trying something like really inefficient and stupid, but it's just fun to play,
yeah,
you'll always get someone being a little too helpful, sometimes in a negative way. So having those titles really cuts down on that.
Yeah, that's understandable. But it's gonna be interesting to like see what's gonna happen, right? Because sometimes like when you do those like endless grind and stuff like that, sometimes I'm just like, should I stream this? Because I'm probably not gonna talk a lot because I gotta be really, really concentrated on doing the thing, you know?
When I played a lot of tournaments back in the day, I would have streams like this where it would even be in parentheses in the title, like focusing on gameplay. People did like to hang out during the practice session, so it might surprise you.
I'll consider that.
So yeah, I'm gonna have to have, a month or 2 or 3 or 4 long endless grind session, just practicing endless, not talking.
Yeah, and I guess maybe in like your first few blind runs, and you just enjoy the blind experience with like the NA boys and everything like that, and then after a while, I can probably help like teach you and understand, like make you understand all the mechanics and like, oh, you can do this, you can do that, like there's these kinds of strategies and whatnot, which can help you really go, the full distance with the NA boys and be literally the first new NA group that comes into JP and be like, we got Eternal Friends.
Yeah, I like this like as a content structure, I guess, for you and me at the moment, which is blind run and then follow-up run with commentated help.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting thing because like I said, I have teammates who have Eternal Friend, right? But like I myself has never pursued it yet. So it's also technically new for me.
And once again, this comes back to the question of, are you going to still play PSO2 when NGS comes out? Yeah, because Endless Friends isn't that easy to get.
Yeah. Endless Friends is okay. Eternal Friends is a hard one.
Eternal Friends,
just
okay,
for clarification. Yep, just for the clarification. But yeah, I guess this question really did go on a really big tangent.
As most of them do.
Which is fine. Yeah, honestly. Which, I'm going to end this on a very, very like lighthearted question just for fun before we finish off this podcast because we're just about passing the 2-hour mark now. So thank you very much by the way, for everyone who listened this far and everything, hope this was a pretty fun one, actually. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the future. But for real, though, like, thank you very much for listening in.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I'm glad there's an audience to hear me complain about the launcher ring.
But yeah, last question here. Do you want to read it out, Cam? This one's a fun one.
This is the one from Sky Mage.
Yep, SkyMage08.
So Sky Mage 08. If ever PSO2 was your reality, aka you guys have access to photons, but you're limited to class selections and can only play one main or sub. Okay, so I think I understand the question.
Yeah.
So a PSO was our reality, what is the one main subclass we play?
Fashion.
Fashion? So you're going off pure aesthetics.
If fashion's a class, dude, I'm a fashion player in PSO, okay? I'm going to have the biggest wardrobe ever. And having it, if fashion is a real class, I can go outside with literally a bath towel, and then whenever anyone talks about, like, anything like that, right? I'm just here like, hey, I can just change my costumes and everything at will. So it's like, that's pretty good.
I mean, you guys already know my answer. It's gonna be, oh shit, I didn't even realize this. It's been so long since we recorded podcast. I've always been on this 50-50 with what I like more for the off-meta class of Ranger Tector or Tector Ranger. It's finally clicked. It's Tector Ranger.
Yeah?
That's the better combo.
No. But the question says you can only pick one.
No, I mean the combo. That's how I'm interpreting it. So, like...
Oh, okay.
Braver Ranger would be the combo. Braver main, Ranger sub.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and so I've always been like in between that 50-50 of which playstyle I like more. Ranger Tector, where it hits a little harder, but the support spells do a little less. Or Tector Ranger, where the support spells do a lot more, but the range weapons hit a lot less. I like the Tector Ranger more. The stronger support spells just play a lot better for how the game plays in pubs.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. And you can definitely find a lot of these specific uses and everything like that. It's very, very interesting to see, like, oh, we can have this, we can have that, and then you kind of just discover over time why one combination is more preferred over the other one like that, right? But I guess also for Skymates, right, is if I were to answer seriously, I would probably just pick Phantom because that's what my main is. And that's what I'm the most comfortable with, you know, being able to like teleport here and there in real life and also like become invisible and do all that stuff. Dude, that's like a dream come true. I can have mastery over melee weapons. I can have mastery over guns and I can do magic casting too. Like, dude, that's it. That's literally it.
I truly enjoy playing support classes in any game. Because I feel like it's a common negative thought to think that support players don't choose to be supports, that they're kind of relegated off to the side because they can't hang in a DPS scenario or something.
Yeah, no, that's not the case.
I always like to say, yeah, but what if somebody just played support with the same intensity as someone who would, you know, lab a DPS main or something like that? When you play support at that level, it's so good. It's the best thing in the game.
A lot of people might not know this, but I'm actually low-key a Tekker main.
For sure. I've seen it.
But yeah, no, that's just a very interesting thing. But the question is, Cam, if you're going to play a Tekker Ranger in real life, what are you going to do?
I'm going to be a space mage with a large gun. That's what I'm going to do.
What are you going to do in life, though? Like, are you going to, like, say, oh, work at a hospital, be like, I'm going to deban you, it's okay?
I guess so.
Yeah. That's funny.
I guess I'd be like an anime villain at that point, like, I can heal you and cause pain. Like,
yeah. Dude, imagine if techs were real, right? Resta would be like the new medical advancement.
For sure.
With like all the like COVID-19 and everything, be like, hey man, no problem, just use anti.
The stubs your toe, like all the steps on a Lego or something. Resta, like, go. My brother over here stubs his toe. I can imagine he'd be a twirl man. He'd be screaming at me, Cam, rest. I'm like, it doesn't work on a twirl.
No, but then if it's a twirl, he wouldn't even feel the pain to begin with.
Oh, that's true. He'd break the wall.
It's like, is the wall okay? But yeah, that's really funny, honestly. Having photons in real life would be absolutely hilarious.
A lot of people bring up that Sword Art Online comparison. Wasn't PSO kind of the inspiration for that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, now we get to go off on that tangent in a future episode where we're like, oh, PSO is an isekai universe where we're transported there.
No, but technically episode 4 is like Sword Art Online because they played a game. But no. I'm not going into that. That is pretty cursed, to be honest.
Definitely cursed.
But yeah, anyways, thank you so much, guys, for sending in all the viewer questions and everything, and just allowing us to really just sit here and just talk about what we love, you know, in Phantasy Star Online 2 and everything like that. It's always been a blast every time we come on these podcasts and we just talk about, and we just nerd out about everything. And so, honestly...
We do. I gotta say, man, streams have been popping off too.
Right?
The community's been really nice. My pubs have been really nice, just running into people. It's been so cool. You guys make this community awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. And if you're 2 hours into this podcast, you're a real one. Thank you so much.
Man, it's awesome. I can't wait for the future. I can't wait for NGS. I can't wait for just everything Phantasy Star right now. Just like, even talking about me as a person, Phantasy Star has brought so much to my life personally, and even brought me here to this point right now. Like personally, I actually chose my college courses, my university courses, out of playing PSO2. I got to meet...
That sounds like a good podcast topic, like overall, just how the games have shaped your real life.
Yeah, even like Fly Ergo too. Like Fly, my good bud here, also shows like to go into like the computer sciences and stuff like that because of PSO.
Fly's a cool dude.
Yeah, isn't that awesome? Like how this has impacted our lives so much. And what I was gonna say just now was just the fact that like with PSO2, I got to meet so many of my greatest friends today. I got to meet you. I got to hang out with so many people. I basically became something here as like a pillar of the community. And like I didn't expect that a lot of the things I learned from just playing a video game would really help me out in real life a lot and whatnot too. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, I gotta say that kind of happened to me as well. I got into gaming at this intensity from a sports injury of all things, and later chose all my university courses around exercise science and whatnot, and sort of took a gaming approach to it, and it's kind of worked out. It's like min-maxing your exercise programs. It's so cool. Gotta get that like 1% strength increase. Here's how we're gonna do it.
Yeah.
First, visit the item lab.
Right. You know what? That might as well be a really... No, but what I was saying was that was probably a really good like preview to what we might be able to just talk about in the next episode coming.
For sure.
In like the next 2 weeks or so. Because it's going to be the episode leading up to the new raid boss, right? Since we already covered this here. So like the episode might be just probably like out right before the new raid boss comes out, and we can just talk about how PSO2 really affects us as persons, or well, people, and well, how it's coming to an end and coming into a new generation.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that already.
Yeah, that sounds really good. Yeah, so before we head off here, any last words, Cam? Always. Not the gun.
Not the gun.
Not the gun.
Man, Bungie did such a good job on that gun. Like, it just makes me happy thinking about that. It used to be a menace, now it's a skill cannon.
That's great.
But no, last words. I'm just really grateful for you guys. Thank you so much. And you?
For me, it's just, I just can't wait. Literally. NA, JP, everything, global, everything Phantasy Star is just like way beyond our expectations. Nobody would have thought that everything would have turned out the way it did. And that just surprises literally everyone. Trust me. Like, not just us, not just me, not just like you guys listening here too, but probably a lot of people who might not even know about the existence of like Phantasy Star, and they see New Genesis and hear about these like awesome systems that like an MMO game can transfer their progress and characters over to like the next game and everything. Like, dude.
Yo, for the record, I was right. I got into Destiny because of PSO, and I was like, I wonder if it works the other way around. I get so many people in my chat saying like, where was this game in my life? And that's gonna happen even more in NGS.
So excited for the future. So excited. But yeah, guys, thank you so much. Like, I know I say this a lot. I know we stress this a lot, but for real though, like, we would not be here if it was not for you guys at all. It's an absolute pleasure for me to meet the Destiny community, getting to meet Cam, getting to meet everyone, and just really help become like this pillar to guide everyone in the right direction of really just enjoying Phantasy Star as Phantasy Star and really just enhancing everyone's gameplay experience by giving, whether it be like the knowledge bombs or just like really, really fun, entertaining videos and streams, and educational ones too.
Yeah, MMOs are community games. They do not work without a community, so everyone plays their part.
Thank you. I guess that's a wrap for today. Thank you very much for dropping by as usual, and we'll probably see you again in either say 2 weeks or so, and also on our streams. So social media links and everything all in the description below if you want to follow Cam, if you want to follow me, if you want to check out our streams, etc, etc, etc. Be sure to check that out. And yeah, we'll see you guys. Always remember to smile. That's a very important thing. Within the midst of like all these like world situation, all the everything, be excited for all these stuff that are happening to the gaming world too. Be happy that you have all our friends connected online. Smile, be happy, stay healthy, and we'll see you guys next time.
Take care.
Take care.